I took for granted for a long time,
Right.
was my health. So I would work, and what I realized is, especially as we're continuing to grow and grow, I'm working a lot of long hours, and so I had to start taking care of my health, and so I decided, well, I would go onto a diet that is kind of a restrictive diet, and you can't even really have cheat days because it resets the whole thing, and that's.
This is Small Business Celebration, where we introduce you to successful small business owners at their place of business so that you can learn something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business and get your next big breakthrough. Producer Emily, this doesn't look like any kind of business we've been in before.
It's a studio.
I know. You keep saying we need to find a place to call home.
So I can keep it?
Welcome to another fantastic episode of Small Business Celebration. We're going to be talking about how do you build culture that reflects values but not based on doctrine. We're also going to be talking about how do you centralize leadership and decentralize operations, or something in between. And to guide us this week on this is Mike Harvey, the CEO of 511 Media. Welcome to Small Business Celebration.
Well, thanks for having me here, Michael. Or I guess thanks for coming here, because this is my place. But
well,
thanks.
Yeah. And Visioneer Nation, if this looks different than our normal show, it's because we are here at the studios of 511 Media. And for Visioneers who have never been here, describe the set that we're in and the kinds of media you guys produce.
So mostly podcasts.
Okay.
But we do some other stuff, but it's mostly podcasts, and it's almost entirely either Christian and or conservative content.
Regarding the hat, make California great again. If that wasn't a clue,
right. And regarding the studio, I think it's a decent setup. We're about to do some upgrades here, but we've been in this room for like 4 or 5 years, and we before that we never had intended or even dreamt about building a studio. But
how did you get this started? Because before 511 Media, you owned, or still continue to own, a very successful IT company, which is?
MLH Solutions.
And what does MLH Solutions do?
Basically, IT services. So it's like outsourced IT department. It's what we in the industry refer to as managed services. So basically, you call us up and we'll take care of whatever problem you have. We're the IT service company.
Sure. And do you do primarily Linux, Windows, Apple?
We have experience with all of it. Primarily, most businesses are on Windows, Windows type system. So, and we do a lot of stuff with Office 365 and the cloud stuff like that. Yeah.
Now, the question is here at 511, what possessed you to start this?
During COVID time, we moved away from California for a while. And we came back. My pastor at the time said, "Hey, we're doing this podcast. Why don't you come and watch?"
Watch a podcast.
Yeah, they were live filming it, right? So kind of like we're doing here, except for they would live stream it, and then they had place for an audience, so we could hang out and watch it. And I said, "Okay, I'll watch." Well, like just about everything I do, I either all in or all out, right? So he quickly asked, "Well, why don't you start helping?" And it went from watching to helping to running it, to the point where the church said, "Hey, we don't want to continue to put resources into this, but we like what you're doing. Why don't you just take it and run with it?" So I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll build a studio." And so that's exactly what we did.
Why 511? And you corrected me very well on this. It's not 511.
Right.
Not 911, 511. It's 511. Where'd that come from?
Okay, so it initially, and it still retains this, but I've since added to it. Initially was 1 Thessalonians 5:11, and it says, "Encourage one another just as you've been doing." We've since also adopted a secondary, which I feel embodies more of our core values than even the first one, which is Ephesians 5:11, which says, essentially, I'll paraphrase, "Have no parts with the works of darkness, and also expose them."
And therefore, you're in a studio with all kinds of lights and lights and lights, shedding light on things, as it were.
Right.
But you've gotten into a whole variety of things more than just podcasts.
Right.
What does 511 Media do?
we've gotten into some nonprofits, and really that's kind of like this on my hat is like our main drive and our main focus, right?
Right.
We go back over the last election cycle, 2024, and the 2020 to 2024, we started working heavily with Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk's organization. And we were traveling the country with them, my family and I, and going to all of their events and doing our podcasts and doing speaking and doing other things. And then we were helping with the elections. And even my 7-year-old who you met was knocking on doors and making phone calls during the election cycle.
Right.
And shortly thereafter, we said, we see California, we see something changing. We think we can make a difference there. We need to stop asking why me and start asking why not me, right? We did that, and I threw my hat over the fence. We went to Turning Point's last conference in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was like 20,000 people in attendance. Our big thing was, turning California.
Right.
And the response was overwhelming. So I hit the road on January 2nd, been driving 5,000 miles a month.
Wow.
Going all over this country, doing tons of events, and that's our main drive and our main focus. So we're doing events now like almost every single week in a different city or...
And you go through and you do more than just events because you guys generate content. You also generate commercials.
Mm-hmm.
What are the kinds of media or that kind of media do you guys develop, not just for faith-based organizations, but also for businesses?
Really we have an ability to do whatever they want, right? But we're kind of selective in that. We work with primarily organizations that are aligned in values with us. We work with several nonprofits, some other aligned businesses, and whatever they need. And a lot of times, like something we did just recently was some videos for a gala for an organization which I'm on the board of, which I truly believe in what they do is shielding the front line. And I don't know if you've ever spoken with Trevor Martinison, but they do some really good work with the first responders in Bakersfield.
Now, I also know that Visioneer Nation is looking at this episode going, aren't they competitors with each other? Because podcast, video,
Right.
video. And no, not really.
No.
Not really. Why is that?
Well, first of all, I would say like there's very little crossover in what we do, right? Your podcast is business focused. Ours is more cultural and social, political,
right,
and faith based. We don't do a ton of production work outside of our own team. Most of our money comes in through sponsorships and things like that.
Right.
So, we do other podcasts for some other people, but even those are not necessarily financed or funded in the same way that you would traditionally think that it would be.
Right.
So if someone like came to hire us to do just some general like commercial work or something like that, most likely we would say, hey, well, why don't you go talk to Michael or talk to somebody, because that's what they focus on, right?
Right.
Like for us, it'd have to be the right person, the right time, the right amount of money, and we're not going to do it just for anybody.
And if you find yourself in a situation where you need some more production and you want to do it at home, but you've got the wrong home to be able to do it, and may I suggest you reach out to Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier Agent with Watson Realty, born and raised and never left Bakersfield. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1@icloud.com today. And Visioneers, if you've got a question, you've got a thought, something you'd like to learn about here on Small Business Celebration, reach out to us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and your question could appear here on Small Business Celebration, just like Cindy, who asks, we've hired a wide, diverse group of employees, but we're finding building culture difficult. How do you build culture that reflects the values and not doctrine?
So, great question. And I kind of have two answers for that. We're very upfront about what we stand for. I think that's very clear and very obvious.
511 Media.
We're a faith-based organization.
Right.
We are a conservative organization, and people who aren't on board with that automatically filter themselves out. We don't have to do that, right? But let's say that it's another organization that like tries to stay apolitical or a-religious or whatever. And I did this a long time ago. I developed a set of core values for myself and then applied those to our organization, right? So we have the core values that are not religious, though they could be viewed in that light also.
Right.
But they are separate from religion and stand on their own. And then everybody can get along with that, right? So like when I talk about my core values, number one is, and I'm sure you probably have read the book or at least heard of it, extreme ownership. right? That's number one core value. So whatever it is, I look internal first. I don't look at, whose fault is this? Well, it's mine because I'm the leader, right? I also generally, at least initially, because sometimes it's inevitable, but I look at problems as a system problem first, not a people problem first.
The problem is in the SOP, the standard operating procedure. Right. It's not in the person.
Right. Number two is it's kind of like an A and B. Number two is done is better than perfect. Let's move and we can figure it out as we go.
Right.
But also the part B of that is constant improvement. We need to run and we need to, oftentimes build the plane as we're falling out of the sky.
Right.
But then also like the next time, let's have the plane ready. Right.
Right.
Number three is seek to understand. What is their perspective? Because just because you have one perspective doesn't mean that it's necessarily right or wrong.
Right.
It's just different. Right.
Right.
And then the number four is always do the right thing. So I've embodied that personally, but I've also applied it to my company. But you can see that those are not necessarily religious or philosophical. Those are stand on their own, though they could be tied to any number of scriptures.
And now, questions by Emily. Now, Visioneers, we've got a very unusual setup this time. As you know, we're here on location with 511 Media. And if you're familiar with our live show, we have producer Emily who has questions by Emily. But this time around, Emily's hidden away in a dark closet somewhere with a microphone. So you'll hear her voice as she asks the questions that we're going to be giving our guests. So fire away, producer Emily.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Okay. I get to be a ghost today, fly on the wall.
That's awesome.
How do you hire good people and keep from turnover so that things can continue to run by themselves?
We're kind of entering a new phase of that now as we continue to grow. So up to this point, most of the hires that we made have been relationships because I'm a relational guy.
Right.
And either they're referrals and they don't always pan out, right? But they're either referrals or somebody we've known for a while, and we work together. But finding somebody out of the blue is much more difficult.
It is.
Finding somebody off of, like, say, monster.com or whatever the hiring site is, or using Universal Staffing Company or Continental Labor, which shout out to Continental Labor if that's all right.
Sure.
That's our friend's business.
So on our other show, it'd be a problem because that's Cazador Consulting, but this one it's perfectly okay.
Mostly up to this point, it's been networking and personal relationships. And even like most of our volunteers are people that we have relationships with and we continue to form. And so, as we bring people into organizations through that. But how do we maintain them? And we don't maintain all of them. It's just a fact of life, whether it's, hey, they want to pursue a different path or it's not what they thought or whatever. Right. But we try to create a culture that is better than most organizations. We try to have fun as much as we possibly can, especially in the IT company, because IT can be grueling. People, most of the time, and this is something you had to learn early on, most of the time they're not calling you because they're happy.
Right.
But also realize they're not mad at you. They're just frustrated with the situation. So how do you have that type of environment that can be kind of grating at times? It's by the way that I treat the people that work for us. And that was a lot of growth for me personally because, I've always been a very direct person.
Right.
And I had to learn to kind of rub some of the sharp edges off because...
Are you trying to say you're one of those people like me who has the innate ability to piss somebody off at 1,000 yards and didn't even realize you did it?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
We have to learn how to overcome those things.
Yeah, we do.
So you mentioned you have sponsorships for the podcast here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you allocate enough time to get support while still putting in the work? Because what people don't realize is a podcast is a lot of work. It's not just the 30 minutes that they see. It's the hours behind the scenes setting up. It's the teardown. It's the prep work.
Editing.
Yeah, it's the editing. So how are you allocating the time to do both? To get support, to go out get the sponsors so that you can continue to do what you do without sacrificing the quality of the podcast?
That's a difficult question to answer because I think just being in business for as long as we've been in business, because we've been in business about 20 years. And the number one skill set I have.
That's the IT company.
Yeah, right. The number one skill set that I have is relationships, building strong relationships and quickly.
Right.
Right. There's not to brag, but there's very few people that are as good at networking as I am. And so I just naturally do things that I don't even think about.
Right.
So, and we have a very good team. We have some really, really good people on our team that just kind of make things work. I remove myself as a bottleneck. You guys are empowered to make decisions without me, even if they're the wrong decisions, because there's very few decisions that any of them are able to make that could, cripple us or hurt us. So how do I find time to promote the sponsorships? Well, that's a lot of what we do, because we do the events, we have our email list, we have our media, we're getting ready to launch a radio show. Essentially, like, we are a media platform. And so, like, wherever someone wants to plug in, that's, probably one of the main conversations that we're having, because I talk to business owners most of the time.
And that brings us to the Visioneer Game. The Visioneer Game is brought to you by Minuteman Press of Bakersfield. Do you need yard signs, phone boards, banners, or signs on the street? Give Minuteman Press of Bakersfield a call at 661-323-7757 or visit them at mmpbakersfield.com. And when you call them, ask about their 24 by 18-inch yard sign special for the month of July 2025. Give Minuteman Press of Bakersfield a call at 661-323-7757 or visit them at mmpbakersfield.com today. Visioneers, if you're not familiar with the way the game works, I have a random word generator here on my phone. I have no idea what the random words that are going to be generated are, but more importantly, neither does our guest. And our guest has to take each of 3 words that I give him and somehow associate each word with his business. Now, Mike, you do realize that if you don't get these words right, the entire world of podcasting is going to become a burning inferno, and we will all perish.
Okay, we're going to destroy the world.
So, are you ready for your first word?
I'm ready.
Your first word is cottage.
One of the things that I took for granted for a long time,
right,
was my health. So I would work, and what I realized is, especially as we're continuing to grow and grow, I'm working a lot of long hours, and so I had to start taking care of my health. And so I decided, well, I would go onto a diet that is kind of a restrictive diet, and you can't even really have cheat days because it resets the whole thing, and that's the carnivore diet. You ever heard of the carnivore diet?
Yeah, nothing but meat.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not nothing but meat. Meat, dairy, and poultry. So
exactly.
eggs and cheese and all that stuff.
Sure.
So one of the things I had to quickly figure out is, when I go to a restaurant, I get a lot of times a steak and I love a good steak, a good ribeye. And you're going. I'm a little bit jealous of you because you're going up to Glenville, and that they have this Saddle Sore restaurant. Get a chance if you get a chance, stop at Saddle Sore.
Right.
Probably the best steak I've ever had. But the side options are always do you want fruit or potatoes or something? And so I find myself eating a lot of cottage cheese.
There it is. Nice, well done. Got it. I was wondering, where is he going to get to cottage? Well, there we go. Okay, well, there we go. Here's the next word: bed.
I travel a lot. 5,000 miles a month is quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I recently found, through networking long enough, and it's only really been about 6 months that we've been doing this, that I have other places I could stay now for like a week straight. So we were over at San Luis Obispo. We went to the San Luis Obispo County Lincoln Reagan dinner on Saturday night, and my friend lives on a ranch. He's like, "Hey, I got a spare bedroom for you and everything else." Well, my wife and I slept that night in that bed, and it was the best bed that I've ever slept in, most comfortable. And I was like, "Man, that is wonderful. Thank you so much."
Nice. That's 2 for 2. Okay, now it all comes down to this: if you don't get this right, it's all for naught. Okay? Your third word is delay.
Delay. Okay. Well, that's actually an easier one in my opinion.
I figured I gave you 2 hard ones in a row. I finished up with an easy one.
Right. Okay. So one of the things that you learn in business, especially if you're a fast-moving, high-functioning, ADHD, high-energy entrepreneur, is, hey, we always want to get things done. Rush. So we get things done as quickly as possible. And our expectations are up to here. So I have employees, obviously, and I tell them all the time, it's like, I know I have a lot of expectations of you guys, but I also want to, and I have the same philosophy that I have for my kids with my employees. I want to give them more love than I ever give them discipline by like a 10-fold measure, right? But I have these very high expectations of myself as well. And my timeline is never God's timeline, right? And so what I found is a lot of times the best things come when things are delayed. When you're in a moment where it's not like in my time, but it's in God's time. If we rush into those things, we're going to mess it up. But God brings us delay because he knows what's best for us, and he knows the things that we're going to have to do and create. So like even what I'm doing now is, Russell Brunson, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Russell Brunson. He talks about a level 10 opportunity.
Right.
And I feel like I'm now finally in that level 10 opportunity. But it took me 20 years almost to get to that level 10 opportunity. But in that delay, God was creating the character and the skill set and the mindset and all the things that I had to learn to be prepared for what I'm doing now.
Mike, I hate to bring it to you. That's 3 for 3. Well done. The podcasting world is safe at last. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And now, since you have this life-changing moment here on Small Business Celebration, who would you like to thank for being here?
Probably the number one person that I have to thank for being on Small Business Celebration podcast is Dave Collins.
He's a great Visioneer. How did you meet Dave?
Well, so we met Dave about, about 12-ish years ago, something like that.
Right.
When we first moved into the space we're in now.
Right.
And we were actually in a smaller space, but it's the same building.
Mm-hmm.
And he is head of sales for Commercial Trade Bureau.
Uh-huh.
And he's always been a great supporter, a great friend. He's been such an encouragement. And so anything I'm doing, he's all in. He's at the events we do locally at least. And so he was a mutual friend of both of ours. And Dave said, no, you got to go talk to Michael. I think you should be on the podcast. So thank you, Dave Collins.
Thank you, Dave Collins.
Being a friend and a supporter.
One of the things that you've been able to do, because you've had a very successful IT business, is you've been able to create 511 Media.
Yeah.
But it's more than just a media company, because it also, both enterprises, support your nonprofit.
Yeah.
And briefly for Visioneer Nation, first of all, very briefly describe what the nonprofit does, but more importantly, describe how these two businesses fund your nonprofit.
Okay, so first of all, there's kind of two separate entities that are the nonprofits, right? So we have the couple for-profit businesses. We have a 501c3 and a 501c4.
Okay.
The 501c3 is focused on heart change and mind change, building up leadership, and focused on faith and family and freedom. Mm-hmm. The 501c4 is focused on political action, mobilization, voter engagement, and those things.
But how does your IT company, a successful 20-year IT company, help facilitate funding the nonprofit?
Well, we just hit a big milestone this past week to where we don't necessarily need to fund it through our for-profit businesses.
Congratulations!
Well,
and how'd you do that?
Through a lot of hard work.
Sure.
And that's a big thing, right?
But you do it through sponsorships.
Yeah. We do it through sponsorships and donors and other things.
And selfish plug, if somebody wants to donate to the 501c3, how do they do that?
You can go on to 511impact.org, and there's a form right there on the homepage. You can hit donate today. One of the things, and I didn't even realize this until I really got into it, most people vastly underestimate the amount of energy, effort, and work that go into building something.
Right.
And even entrepreneurs that have been doing it for a while, to build something big and massive, it requires a lot of late nights, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of miles, a lot of things that will stretch you out of your skin that you never imagined possible. So when we were essentially on the road every single day this year, we built up enough relationships in enough places that now we're doing events, and we just had a gala fundraiser, which we've gotten rave reviews on. People loved it. It was one of the best events in the county.
Nice.
We had State Senator Shannon Grove speak and several others, and we had a live band and all this stuff, and people had a wonderful time. Well, I was talking with the team last night, and we had I don't know if any of you guys know Mike Grigg, and if you don't, you should
Right.
get him on your show. But Mike's part of our team also.
Nice.
And he was over at one of our volunteers' houses last night with a kind of debrief after that event, and he said to me, he's like, "You guys don't stop." It's like I have no stop in me.
Right.
So it's like 18 hours a day or I'm dead.
Right.
That's about all there is. So the short answer is just a lot of hard work, a lot of networking, and having the passion inside of me that other people see, and it's contagious because like no one's ever going to believe in your organization more than you do. But if you believe in it, like to your core, other people will catch that fire.
And that brings us to our second Visioneer question, which is also brought to you by Mike Saba, a Zillow Premier Agent with Watson Realty, selling Bakersfield homes since 1992. Give Mike Saba a call at 661-203-8406 or reach him at mikesaba1@icloud.com today. Visioneer Jaime asks, we're growing our second business, which is nothing like our first. Do you centralize leadership or decentralize operations, or what works best for you?
Man, that's a great question.
It's something you have innate knowledge in.
Yeah, right.
Because your two businesses are totally different.
Vastly different. And with our 511 ecosystem, they all kind of they're technically like three different entities, but they all kind of function together in a way.
Right.
But the IT company is like completely separate and we don't even cross over like customers for the most part. We have like one couple, I guess.
So you couldn't poach customers from one to feed the other. You
Right.
had to build
and we
bases
don't even,
for both.
Yeah, and we don't even frankly want to do that,
Right.
Because I don't want to like upset the apple cart on that, right?
Right.
But so one of the big things, and I kind of alluded to or even mentioned this earlier, is empowering your people, right? And trusting them to make good decisions, but then also giving them the opportunity to fail in safe ways,
Right.
Because they'll learn, right? And just like I do with my kids, I give them an opportunity to make mistakes because the only way they can really learn is by making mistakes. So, when it comes to like decentralizing leadership or centralizing leadership, we have people all over the country that have worked for us. We have, especially in the IT business, we have people that oftentimes, they don't come into the office, but we talk regularly.
Right.
But we have a culture that we care about each other. We actually check on each other on a more personal level, and we do not micromanage. That's, again, the biggest thing for me is remove myself from the equation because I will always be the bottleneck.
It's no secret that there's a lot of business owners right now that are struggling. What do you say to business owners, especially here in California, who are having a really difficult time, and let them know that not all hope is lost?
So I think you worded this question a little bit different earlier, right? Is the American dream dead? Right. And I think that it's not dead, but I think in a lot of people, a lot of individuals, it's more dead than it used to be, like say 100 years ago.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't have that same entrepreneurial drive and spirit that our forefathers did. Right. Because back when this country was founded, it was like make or break just to survive. Right. Now we're in such a comfortable position that the only way to really get ahead is to have that level of drive that is far beyond just the comfort, right? And most of the most successful people that I see are people that came from nothing Like they didn't have a super comfy, cushy job, right? It was called the golden handcuffs, right? You familiar with that, Michael?
Sure. Yeah.
And with the golden handcuffs, it's hard to break out of that, right? I see many people starting up businesses every single day. And what makes or breaks the difference between them is the ability to be resourceful, right? Because when you're faced with a situation of, am I going to make payroll next week? Like you either figure it out or you don't.
Right.
Is it harder today than it was, say, even 20 years ago? Absolutely. But it's not impossible. You are the sum average of the 5 closest people to you. So who are you surrounding yourself with? Because if you're not surrounding yourself by people that are stretching you, then you're not going to grow.
Mike, this has been a real treat. Thank you for joining us here on Small Business Celebration
Thank you, Michael.
Inviting us into your studio here at 511.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and you're welcome to come back anytime, Michael.
Thank you. Well, sometime we may have to switch seats.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to.
That way you can grill me.
Okay.
And maybe even producer Emily, who's hiding away in the closet.
We'll get all of you guys on here on camera. That'll be fun. It'll be a good time.
And if Visioneers want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
There's a few different ways, but the easiest way is probably on social media. Number one, I'm most personally active on Facebook. Mm-hmm. You can go to 2 different websites. I mentioned one earlier, 511impact.org. The second one is makecagreatagain.com. There's a contact form on there you can fill out as well. So.
And the website for your IT business?
mlhsolutions.com.
And about the studio, how do they get in touch with you there?
511media.co or weare511.com. There's a lot of websites.
And I'll be right back with my final thought. Business owners lie when they're telling you everything is great. Business owners lie when they tell you everything's great. I've been to a few business mixers now, and invariably there's 1 or 2 brand new business owners who come bounding into the event with a big grin on their face, their hands right out to shake your hands while their other hand is thrusting their business card into your pocket. And invariably 2 or 3 business mixers later, after they've told you over and over again, oh, business is great, business is wonderful, business is sunshine, lollipops, and unicorns and rainbows, they are never heard from ever again. Why? Well, business is not easy. As a former business owner once told me, a business owner has to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And one of the things I've noticed that the successful business owner does, the one that has the longevity to keep going to mixers week after month after year after decade, is that when you ask them how business is going, invariably the successful ones will tell you about how they had this problem they were dealing with, and this employer of theirs just knocked it out of the park. Or they had this customer that came to them with this problem, and boy, was it a doozy. They weren't sure how they were going to get over this or fix this or be able to help this customer, and yet somehow they managed to figure it out. They understand that being in business is about the adventure. It's about the trials and tribulations. It's about overcoming. So beware of the business owner that tells you everything's great. For those are often the business owners that are short-sighted, short-lived, and it's the business owner who succeeds that realizes that it's about their people and helping their customers overcome, and being honest about it is the root of their success. I hope you enjoyed our conversation this week here on Small Business Celebration, and I hope you learned something that you can use today to grow a strong and profitable business, and we'll see you here again next week when we celebrate another small business making a big breakthrough.
Growing a successful business has helped my employees and team members' families by giving them something to look forward to. We create a culture of almost family within our business. That was something that was very key to me. And there's a fine line you got to walk as a business owner in that too, because they're not your best friend. But you can build a culture in which people have excitement, they look forward to going to work, which thereby increases their happiness factor, or whatever you want to call that, when they go home. They're in a better mood. One of the other things that we make a point to do is, regardless of what the situation is, where we're at, if somebody's family member calls, I don't let them voicemail them. I make a point, answer that call, because family's first no matter what. A few ways you can get better at public speaking. Number one is just do it. Just start talking, right? When I first started podcasting, doing live streams, I was terrible. And I was scared. I didn't know what to do, how to do it, what to say, any of those things. But one of the tips I give people very frequently is, hey, if you're scared to get up in front of people, the camera is actually, in my opinion, harder to get in front of than people are, because the camera doesn't give you feedback. When you're talking in front of a crowd, you at least kind of can gauge, and then don't just do it once, do it repeatedly, over and over and over and over. And then, like, if you're like just completely terrified of it, and this is what I did in the beginning, start a Facebook group. Don't invite anybody in. Just start talking to the camera on a daily basis, and then slowly invite a couple people in that you trust, that you know, like your mom, your sister, your wife, your husband, whatever. Invite them in. Hey, give me a little bit of feedback, but be nice to me. And then invite more people, and your confidence will grow and grow and grow. And the more you're in front of people, the more practice you have, you'll get better and better and better. The other thing is record as much of it as you can, so you can go back. And sometimes when I watch myself, especially in the early days, you cringe. You're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. But the only way to get better, and I'll give you a sports analogy here, the only way to improve your performance, the only way to improve your play, is by watching game tape. There is hope for business owners in the state of California, because people are starting to wake up and realize that the direction we've been headed, the track we've been going down, is not sustainable. And we've been working closely with people all across the state. And that's from even the Bay Area to LA, in the bluest areas that exist. And people are waking up and realizing, like, we can't continue to go down this path. But we have encouragement. We have hope. We have a reason to believe that things are changing. Not just that they're going to change. Like, I'm seeing them change on a daily basis. The more and more people I talk to throughout all over the place. With those changes will come, ultimately, we will see a change and a turning of the corner, where I believe businesses will come back to California. People will come back to California, and we will have a much better environment than we have today. I've heard it said a few different times in a few different ways that owning a business is the number one personal growth development course that you can ever possibly take. I've learned so much by owning a business. And by the way, I never have received a formal college education. Yeah, I took a few classes, but it's irrelevant. But that said, I've invested in my education, my learning, my growth, and talked to people and taken courses online or whatever, because I want to continue to grow as a person, as an individual, both in my leadership, as a husband, as a father, and as a business owner. So owning a business is the number one personal growth and personal development course, if you will, that ever existed. The number one thing to never do at a networking event, to just stick to a group of people that you're comfortable with. You got to stretch outside of your comfort zone. Growth only comes from being outside of your comfort zone. That doesn't come from being around just the 5 people that you know very well over and over and over. Keys to networking are, number one, you got to be comfortable in your own skin. You got to be able to get out there and be around other people. And sometimes it may not always feel comfortable. I just happen to be fortunate enough to be an extrovert. If you're an introvert, you still got to be out there, especially if you're trying to build your business or you're trying to build relationships with other people. Number 2, don't be afraid to walk up to people. You got to find common ground. So wherever they're at, find something that you can talk about. And number 3 is follow up. Not just, hey, let me have a conversation in this room, but try to be in as many rooms as you possibly can, as often as you possibly can, but also set an appointment. We call this BAM FAM, book a meeting from a meeting. So if you're in a conversation, set a coffee date right then and there. If you're in a phone call, set the next appointment, whatever that is. And try to make a point to get to know somebody on a relational basis first before you try to close new business with them. The best podcast to listen to is one that you can walk away with something that you've learned. It's something that you can either apply to your life, to your business, or otherwise. And sometimes that's parenting, but whatever it is that's going to make you a better person, that's something that you should be listening to regularly.